Cousin Vinny coming to you. We reached the highs on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we've since had 2 distribution days, and we had a little rally on Friday on lower volume with a look at the week ahead and a small watch list. Looking at the ES, we can see that we had reached the highs at 1530.37. Looking at the bullish percents, note that we had a low in November and again in June. And back to the ES, that's when we put in our lows for those periods, June and November. Now we're at highs, and the bullish percents have reached 83.40, clearly overbought. So it's reasonable to expect a pullback here. And overlaying fibs, you can see that the 50%, if this trend line continues higher over the next few days, next few weeks, that we could see a pullback to 50%, and would be highly reasonable and probable that that will occur. Also note TSI is down through the 0 level, so we've got a sell signal there as well. Moving averages, price is struggling to get back above the short-term 10-period moving average and the 20. Looking at the comp, we see the same thing. We're in overbought territory, and the NASDAQ has since had 2 distribution days on higher than normal volume. I pointed out last week on Sunday that if you look at the weekly, we have a head and shoulders top and something to be aware of. And we could expect something along this type of pattern here. With respect to the New York Composite, we see the same thing, overbought and moving lower. We want to keep an eye on finance. That's up at 88 and moving sideways. So looking at those sectors, one would expect XLF finance to give us some sign here shortly, with bullish percent being up at 88, overbought, and one of the only sectors that hasn't turned down yet. One also has to keep in mind that consumer staples is continuing to move higher. That would be an indication that some investors are considering some safety. Note XLB, how we sold off pretty hard on increased volume, distribution there, distribution here on real estate, distribution on XLE, distribution on XLF, although we are moving sideways, XLI, same thing, distribution day on XLK, and a distribution day on the cyclicals. So keep an eye on these sectors, keep an eye on XLF, the comp, the New York Stock Exchange, and the S&P, because we're overbought in most cases. Looking at a different way with a chart from John Murphy, note that the overbought areas where we saw a top and a subsequent move down, and we're currently at that level now too on the NYA. So one has to be very cautious right now and pick stocks that are in great setups, but also keep mindful of what's going on with the S&P 500 and the other indices. On Friday, note that I pointed out the Fibonacci's from this recent move lower, that we were right at the 50% level retracement, and just slightly exceeded that. We have the 50-period moving average that we're testing, and 618 right here just above the 50-period moving average. So be cognizant of that going in to the week. I would expect, it's very possible to see a move like so that would bring us back down to these levels at 147.50, 148. So do keep that in mind coming into the week. Be cautious. If we see a move above the 50 period, that could be a good sign for bulls. Note that we're almost oversold, or almost overbought. So that's on the 60-minute. If you're trading gold, this is something you want to keep in the back of your mind as gold prices continue to move higher. The darker gold line, note that commercial traders have been selling their shares, so they're not as bullish as they were as we were seeing this move higher. So if you're thinking of trading gold, I talked about that last week. There was a possibility we could see a bounce down here. We got this little tipped bounce. Now we have a pivot that we can trade off of. But I'd be very cautious on getting too crazy long on this, especially considering the commitment of traders report, the last one last week, showed a decrease in longs on the commercial side. SLV is in a nice pattern. Note the tepid bounce on lower volume. We saw some pretty nasty selling during the week and the previous December. Stochastics is oversold though, and it could turn. So we could see a move back up to a channel line up here. Actually, this is a falling wedge. That's still bullish. You can see a move back up above the moving averages and this upper trend line. So keep an eye on SLV as well. Euro US dollar has gotten embedded down here. It is pointing lower though. On Friday we saw this selling action, and now we have this pullback to deal with, which looks like it's headed right down to the 200 period, the red line here. Alright, so that's very conceivable. We could see a pullback down to that level before we see a bounce. I've also been watching the Aussie-Japanese yen pair, this ascending channel that we've finally broken down through. We came back up and retested on Friday. So I might be trading that this week in my Forex account. The 382 is down here at 90.50. I don't see that happening, but on a shorter time frame, there's probably other pivots or other fibs to look at. The 127 extension is up here at 102.25. So I'm going to keep that on my charts for now. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know the DBV I talk about. Stephen Place turned me on to this some time ago. You can see that we've stepped higher, and as DBV continues to step higher, a reflection of the carry trade, you would expect stock prices to move higher as well. Stochastics is pointing lower, and we saw a doji on Friday. Looking at GTO's put-call ratio, nice chart. You can see that we appear to be making a little turn here and headed back towards the moving average. Let's take a look at some things I have on my watch list. Molson Coors. If you draw a trend line here, you can see where we are. We broke above that level. Obviously, I wouldn't chase this now. I'd wait for a pullback to a moving average. Pepsi is also another candidate, again thanks to John Murphy. Nice breakout, and we're flagging here. Note the fibs. If we overlay these pivots to their breakout level, we can see that we exceeded the 127 extension. We have the 1618 up here at 77 and change. So it's highly likely that we could see a move higher, although we are overbought. So watch this level in here between the breakout level and the 1618 and 127. Continue to flag here, and Stochastics manages to get a little bit overbought, oversold. We might see enough room to move higher on Pepsi. Looking at Colgate-Palmolive, CL, we can also see all this buying volume that we've put in over the last week with Stochastics overbought. Price action speaks for itself though, so that's CL. Kroger, another consumer staple that I like a lot. You can see the pattern. We're in here. We're right at the highs. Stochastics is set up the best out of these 3 or 4 stocks. So keep that in the back of your mind. Write it down in your notebook. Write it down in your trader's notebook for a possible trade this week. There's a little pullback here, and then a move higher. Note the volume. While everything else is looking a little tepid, these consumer staples are really looking nice. Okay. VSH was mentioned on StockTwits quite a bit last week. Note the highs that we're at. We're overbought. We can look at the short percent. It's at 10.85%, so it's a significant short percent. And as you can see, they're in the semiconductor index. They're the semiconductor stock. We're overbought, but we could embed. Just keep an eye on your MACD. If this flattens out and starts to move higher, it's a possibility we could see a move higher quickly. If this turns down and crosses along with the stochastics, you may want to wait a little while on this one. Note the volume though. Note Autodesk is pulling back to the 50 period. A few more days. We're almost oversold now. We're setting up. Could see a nice move lower. Excuse me. We could see a couple more days lower and get oversold and get a crossover to get a nice trade off of this one. Okay, so that's Autodesk. Also note the Kirby up here. Note Amgen. We're right at an upper trend line resistance, but stochastics looks like it's going to give us a chance to move higher. Also note the inverted head and shoulders off the 200 period and the Kirby up here. EWC, the Canadian Index Fund, looking quite nice up here for your Canadians, our northern brethren. Nice uptrend. Stochastics is oversold. We'll wait for a cross here. Texans looking really strong. We had to move back down to the 50 period. I completely missed this on Wednesday and Thursday. It was in my book, but I got sidetracked. But we did get down to oversold. We did get down. Stochastic did move lower, so this is looking pretty decent. Note the Kirby above this level. And the breakout this week could be very interesting, even with XLK being a bit overbought. WAGE, interesting breakout here. We're embedded. Maybe a look for a pullback in this one, and possible fate of this move. We can see that we have a very short percentage, a very mild short percentage, very small short percentage of the float. Tax advantage programs, consumer direct health, MetLife, and a bunch of other healthcare stocks. You got to keep an eye on these because of the sequester this week, Friday. Sorry, it's starting to sell off here. United Healthcare Group, Aetna, mentioned that last week as well. Sitting right on the 50 period, we get oversold here. Something happens positive for healthcare. This could be a nice move on Aetna. I like trading Aetna. It's a good stock. Well-run company. And note the Kirby's up here. These levels. H&E Equipment Company. Looks like we're pulling back a little bit to the 50 period down below. It could be a nice bounce level. You know what we've done before. We are a little extended since we broke above the 200 period. So this is a little more risky pullback. You really generally want to take the first and second pullbacks to the 50 period. Third pullback is usually a little bit more risky, so take a less of a position if you decide to trade this one. This is a nice strong looking stock. On StockTwits, stochastics got a little bit more room. You could scalp this on Monday possibly. Note the Kirby up here. A nice $10 stock. Taiwan Semiconductor continues to move higher. We talked about this one last Sunday. Now that we've broken above this level, and we're just continuing to stair step higher. Is this the high for the year? Stochastics making a turn here. It's possible we could see a pullback to the 50 period, which would be inviting and a possible trade. So keep an eye on Taiwan Semiconductor. We also looked at EMC, STX, Seagate, and Western Digital, which I like less than I do STX, but it's in a stronger pattern, which is interesting because I like STX hard drives better. We're oversold now, just about. 50 pairs just below us, so WDC actually looks pretty decent. And STX putting in a bear flag possibly. Maybe it bounces here and we see a nice channel develop. Right, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you on February the 24th, Sunday, with a look at the week ahead and a watch list. Remember to come check out your free two-week free trial over at daytraderbootcamp.com. And if you're a member, we'll see you in room on Monday. Take care.